So today we'll be taking a look at a few stories about the new WWE Raw writer, Bayley, and much more. Let's start things off with these new viral comments from one of the latest signings for the Raw creative team. So when it comes to Raw, NXT, and SmackDown, it's very easy to notice they all have a very unique feel to them. Raw doesn't feel like SmackDown, SmackDown doesn't feel like Raw, and NXT is basically doing their own thing as well. Each brand has their own separate creative teams that seems to be responsible for their one brand. The NXT and SmackDown teams receive praise for their great work, but it's the Raw team that faces the most criticism from the fans. Now, the June 21st edition of Raw was probably the best of Raw that we've seen in a very long time. But there was a long period of time there after WrestleMania where Raw felt like they were literally using the week's prior script and just making small changes to it. Nothing but rematches, six-man tags, and disqualifications galore. Not exactly the best recipe for a great wrestling show. But if Raw can keep pushing on shows like the June 21st edition, then things may be looking up. A new WWE Raw writer, Kenise Mobley, made headlines just about everywhere for her comments on the Asian Not Asian podcast. Kenise talked about getting the role for WWE and mentioned how they didn't even talk about having any wrestling knowledge. Kenise had this to say, "Yes, I've just been hired by WWE. Given the things that you know about me and my entire life and what I'm into, yes, that's surprising. Yes, also a surprise for me. They did not require me to know anything about wrestling, but I do have a background in film production and comedy writing, and they're like, perfect, come on in." Kenise also struggled to remember the name of WWE champion Bobby Lashley, even calling him Bobby Ashley at one point during the interview. So yeah, those comments just went viral and made headlines everywhere. Everyone already assumed that this was the case. You watch the product and you could already sense that maybe there's a few writers back there that's not too familiar with wrestling. You can really get that feeling from watching the product. But to actually hear the confirmation of that fact come from a writer's mouth just blew everyone's mind. So having the degrees and everything else that these new writers have is absolutely fantastic. That's a massive accomplishment. They're more than qualified to be hired for this field of work. But it is a bit alarming that your new writers have no wrestling knowledge at all and can't even name your WWE champion, one of the most important characters on the show that they'll probably be writing for one day. So when you look at it like that, it is a bit embarrassing when one of the latest signings can't even name the most important character on their brand. But maybe they don't let these new writers with no real wrestling knowledge even touch big superstars on the roster right away. Maybe they just have them doing smaller things until they get more experience under their belts. But it was very concerning and embarrassing situation for sure. It was later announced that Kenise was in fact released from the WWE after those remarks. But we'll see how everything turns out if Raw can stay going down a good path. Let's get into Bayley responding to CM Punk's deleted tweet. Bayley was on Twitter this week in her full-blown heel persona. She said that she had a few free hours, so she wanted to do a question and answer session. So all the fans were sending in thousands of questions, but the joke was that Bayley wasn't answering a single one. Bayley did receive a question from former WWE superstar CM Punk, who had this to ask. "If you could wrestle one person who lives in my house, who would it be?" CM Punk surprisingly deleted the tweet shortly after, but thankfully, fans screenshotted the message. Bayley responded to CM Punk and had this to say, "My precious heart couldn't leave you all hanging, so I'll pick a random to answer. CM Punk, what a lucky coincidence. Would choose AJ. Winner gets to take cute man Larry on a walk." So that tweet ended up being the only question that Bayley answered in those few hours. But it was a big question that caught a lot of fans' eyes. Some fans may not be aware of this fact, but Bayley and AJ did actually have the opportunity to wrestle each other back in 2013. AJ went over to NXT just as a way to get more fans to check NXT out back then. Bayley and AJ interacted backstage and had a championship match later in the night that AJ Lee ended up winning by pinning Bayley. So AJ Lee left right as the women's division was changing, but one of those newer talents she did get to work with was Bayley. Bayley and AJ are also extremely close friends in real life and have met on numerous times since AJ has left. So it's not a shocker at all that Bayley would choose AJ. Even though they already wrestled in the past, it was a long time ago, and fans would obviously still love to see them go at it again. Bayley has drastically changed as a character and is now a WWE veteran herself, compared to just being a WWE rookie back then. So a new matchup between the two of them would be even more interesting than the first meeting. Obviously, a WWE return for AJ Lee seems like it will never happen though. She's extremely busy with all of her writing work. Like we mentioned a few weeks ago, she's working on a film script that's going to be a big deal. She's also working with DC Comics for a Wonder Woman story. So she's still up to a lot in her newly found career and shows no signs of slowing down there. So a return to the ring may literally be the last thing on AJ's mind right now. But we'll see if these two ever meet in the ring again. Let's talk about some of the speculation going on with Drew McIntyre. So Drew McIntyre lost the WWE title several months ago and has suffered a few pinfall losses lately. But when you really look deeper into it all those losses for McIntyre all have asterisks next to them as well. There's always an excuse or a way of him being protected. Try to think of the last time Drew McIntyre was destroyed, laid out, and down for the count. Despite the small losing streak he's on, he hasn't lost in the fashion in a really long time. Every time he loses, it's either by a distraction or a quick roll-up, where he jumps back to his feet seconds later to show that it was a fluky win for his opponent. It's always something like that. And the question that everyone has was, what do they have planned? Why is he being protected like this? Well, there's one rumor floating around right now that could be the reason why. There's rumors of Drew McIntyre possibly shifting over to SmackDown late this summer to be a big credible challenger for Roman Reigns. Due to this stipulation, Drew McIntyre is no longer allowed to challenge for the WWE title as long as Bobby Lashley is champion. So what if the reason for him being protected so much is because they want him to still feel like a threat to Roman Reigns? That makes a lot of sense. Roman and Drew faced off at last year's Survivor Series and had a good thing going, but obviously it couldn't continue after the event because they're on separate brands. But if Drew McIntyre was to go over to SmackDown, especially with the amazing teams surrounding Roman's story, that would really work for sure. Roman and Drew can pick up from where they left off at last fall. Not to mention that Drew McIntyre was even protected in that match as well. Drew seemed to be in control of the match until Jay got heavily involved and assisted Roman in the win. So Drew still has the case and story going for him of Roman never defeating him straight up. It'll be interesting to see how the fans react to Drew challenging Roman as well. Everyone became sick of Drew challenging Lashley non-stop with that story never really going anywhere. So would they be happy to see Drew McIntyre versus Roman again? Probably so. Like we mentioned before, there's Raw writers who don't even know who Bobby Lashley's name is. So Roman's writers would most likely take better care of you and know who you are over there on SmackDown. So we'll see if Drew McIntyre does in fact jump over to SmackDown this summer. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments, don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.